In 1979, in a gravel lot behind an auction barn in the Missouri Ozarks, 29-year-old Ruth Weller paid $18 for 612 pumpkins nobody else would touch. They were split from frost, scarred by mud, soft at the stems, stacked in crooked orange heaps beside the loading dock, waiting for a dump truck. To the men watching from the hay scales, those pumpkins were trash. To Ruth, they were feed, seed, bedding heat, soil medicine, and one more winter her farm might not have to borrow from the bank. The auction manager, Ted Rollins, had been trying to get rid of them since sunrise. Grocers had rejected the whole lot. The skins were bruised. Some had burst open in the night chill, their flesh shining like lantern wax in the weak morning sun. Ted saw rot. The county saw disposal fees. The feed-store men leaning against the scale house saw a joke walking toward the pile in muddy boots. Ruth heard one of them say, "There goes Ezra Weller's girl, buying garbage with grocery money." Another man laughed so hard he coughed. She did not turn around. That was one of the first things her father had taught her about ridicule. Never feed it. It grows. Ruth stood in front of Ted Rollins with her hands tucked into the pockets of her canvas coat and asked, "What will it cost you to haul them off?" Ted wiped his forehead with a paper feed receipt. 45, maybe 50, if the dump man is in a mood. "I'll give you 18, Ruth said. "And I'll have the lot gone before church bells tomorrow." Ted looked at the pumpkins, then at Ruth, then back at the men by the scale house, who were already grinning like they had been invited to a funeral and found cake. 600 pumpkins, Ted said. 612, Ruth answered. She had already counted the rows. That made him look at her differently. Not kindly. Not yet. But carefully. He wrote the receipt on the back of a torn invoice, took her $18, and told her the dock was hers until morning. By noon, the joke had left the yard ahead of her. By supper, half the county knew Ruth Weller had bought a mountain of ruined pumpkins. By dark, Ruth was backing her father's old International truck under the auction barn light, alone. The men had gone home. The laughter had not. It followed her in memory as she loaded the first pumpkins into the bed. Each one was awkward, heavy, slick with clay or split juice. They knocked against the truck boards with dull, wet thuds. Her gloves soaked through. Her shoulders burned. Orange pulp stuck under her fingernails. But Ruth was not moving garbage. She was moving a system. To understand why, you have to understand Ezra Weller. Ezra had farmed 96 stony acres on a road the county forgot to grade. He kept dairy sheep when everyone told him sheep were too much trouble. He repaired old equipment with wire, patience, and profanity spoken under his breath. He wrote numbers and ledger books instead of trusting memory. Because memory, he said, had a way of flattering a man. He was respected by some, laughed at by many, and owned by nobody. That last part mattered most to him. "You can owe a neighbor a favor," he told Ruth when she was 16, "but don't owe a banker your sunrise. Sunrise should belong to the person who gets up for it." Ezra did not believe a farm was a straight line from store-bought input to marketable product. He believed it was a circle. Grass fed sheep. Sheep fed soil. Soil fed clover. Clover fed milk. Milk paid taxes. Manure paid the field back. And anything thrown away before it had made the circle was not waste. It was unfinished work. His ledgers were full of that kind of thinking. Not poetic on the page. Practical, sharp, written in pencil beside rain totals, lambing dates, milk weights, hay moisture, fence repairs, vet bills, and experiments that made other men shake their heads. The pumpkin experiment had begun after an October hailstorm in 1966. A truck patch on the ridge had been smashed in one afternoon. Ezra gathered the cracked pumpkins nobody could sell, cut away the sour parts, and fed the clean flesh in small portions with dry hay. He recorded which ewes tolerated it, which grew loose,
which improved, and how much grain he could pull back without losing condition. He learned the rule that mattered. Pumpkins were not a miracle. They were not enough by themselves. But, handled right, in cold weather, with roughage, salt, and patience, they were winter calories, winter moisture, and winter variety at a time when bagged feed climbed higher than a poor man could reach. He saved seeds from the firmest fruits. He composted the ruined ones with sheep bedding, until the pile steamed in December. The next spring, he spread that dark, sweet rot on a shale patch, where nothing but broom sedge wanted to live. By August, the shale patch had clover in it. That was the kind of proof Ezra trusted. Not talk, not theory, not the neighbor's opinion. A field that changed. So when Ruth finished a third trip from the auction yard and started sorting pumpkins by lantern light, she did not work like a desperate woman. She worked like a woman following a map. She made 3 piles in the lower barn. The first pile was for feed. These pumpkins were bruised but sound. Split maybe, scarred maybe, ugly enough to make a grocer sneer, but still clean inside. She called those the keepers. They went onto dry straw where air could move around them. There were 387 keepers. The second pile was for seed. These were the hard, late-season pumpkins with thick stems and deep color, the ones that had survived frost better than the rest. Ruth set those apart on feed sacks, not because she needed pumpkins next week, but because she intended to need them next year. There were 74 cedars. The last pile was for heat. These pumpkins were too far gone. Their skins had caved. Their bellies had started to sour. Fruit flies lifted off them in little black clouds. A town would call that filth. Ezra would have called it a stove that had not been lit yet. Ruth split them with a corn knife, shoveled the pulp between layers of straw, old bedding, leaves, and sheep manure, and built the compost stack high enough to warm itself. By the time the first pale light came over the sycamores, Ruth had moved all 612 pumpkins. Her arms trembled when she unlatched the gate. Her back felt like a plank. Her hair smelled of smoke, frost, and pumpkin flesh. But the auction dock was empty. And in her barn, a county joke had become 3 assets: winter feed, next year's seed, and heat for dead ground. That was the part nobody at the feed store could see. They saw a woman who had inherited a hard farm too young. They saw a father buried 6 months earlier, and a daughter trying to preserve his odd habits. They saw 64 dairy ewes on thin hills, a rusting truck, a narrow account at the bank, and a winter coming early. They did not see the circle. October came mean. The first freeze was followed by hard rain. Hay was scarce. Corn had run high all year. Diesel cost more than it had any right to. Men who had mocked Ezra's hatred of debt began signing notes with faces as gray as dishwater. At the co-op, talk changed from weather to survival. Some farmers sold off breeding stock before Christmas. Some stretched feed so thin their animals wore the decision in their ribs. Some took loans and called it management, because fear sounds better when you dress it in business words. Ruth went home and opened the lower barn. Every morning she split 2 or 3 pumpkins on a chopping block, cleaned away any sour edge, and fed the orange flesh in measured portions with hay. Not too much, never sloppy, never alone. She kept salt where the sheep could reach it. She watched manure. She watched bellies. She watched eyes. Her father's ledgers had not made her careless. They had made her exact. The ewes learned quickly. At first they sniffed the pumpkin like it was a trick. Then old Juniper, Ezra's black-faced lead ewe, took a bite. After that, the others crowded in. Soon the barn had a new winter sound, teeth pulling soft flesh from rind, hooves shifting in straw, the low, satisfied breath of animals fed without hurry. Ruth wrote everything down. Pounds of hay, pumpkins opened, milk weight, body condition, weather, costs avoided. She did not write down the jokes, though she heard them. At the feed store, Someone asked if she planned to milk pumpkins after the sheep died. At church, a woman put a hand on Ruth's sleeve and said, with terrible sweetness, "Your daddy did make it hard for you, didn't he?" Ruth smiled because there are insults that dress themselves as sympathy, and poor people learn to recognize them by the fit. The bank man came in November. His name was Mr. Kale, and he had soft hands that looked embarrassed to be attached to him. He sat at Ruth's kitchen table and explained, politely, that a small operating note would be sensible. Feed volatility, equipment risk, market uncertainty, responsible planning. He used clean words for dirty hooks. Ruth listened.
The wind pressed against the farmhouse windows. On the table between them lay Ezra's ledger, her own new pages tucked inside it. Mr. Kale tapped the paper with one finger and said, "Your father was a good man, Ruth. But good men can leave behind old methods." For the first time all season, her certainty slipped. Not because she believed him. Because the numbers were cruel. If the pumpkins failed, she could not replace the feed. If milk dropped, she could not cover the taxes. If a sickness moved through the flock, she would have to borrow fast and borrow badly. The house felt too quiet after Mr. Kale left. The kind of quiet that makes a woman hear every voice that ever doubted her. That night, Ruth sat in Ezra's chair until the fire burned down to coals. Then she put on her coat and walked to the barn. The sheep were bedded deep in straw, round and calm, their coats thick, their breathing steady. Juniper lifted her head when Ruth came in, then lowered it again, as if nothing in the world was urgent enough to interrupt digestion. Ruth stood in the doorway and felt foolish for almost believing a man who had never pulled a lamb at 2 in the morning. The bank knew paper. Her father had known systems, and the animals, in their quiet way, were giving testimony. By January, the county was hurting. The cold held hard. The creek skimmed over with ice. Trucks groaned on rutted roads. Hay barns emptied faster than expected. Ruth's flock did not look untouched. No living thing goes through winter untouched. But they looked carried. Their backs held flesh. Their eyes stayed bright. Milk dipped, but not enough to frighten her. Her creamery tickets proved it. Where other small dairies were seeing sharp winter drops, Ruth's numbers held within a narrow band. She had bought $18 of pumpkins. By February, her ledger showed she had avoided 31 sacks of grain. 31 sacks she did not have to buy on credit. 31 hooks that never entered her kitchen. The men at the feed store stopped laughing first. They did not apologize. Men like that often think silence is a form of generosity. But they stopped using her name as a punchline. In March, the compost pile sank and darkened. Ruth turned it with a fork on the first warm afternoon. Steam rose out of it like breath from a living animal. The rotten pumpkins had disappeared into black humus threaded with straw and rich enough to hold in her palm like cake. She spread it on the south slope. That slope had always been the farm's embarrassment. 4 acres of tired ground below the cedar line, thin as old paper, sour in wet weather, and hard as crockery in August. Ezra had called it the sleeping field. Ruth did not plow it deep. She was done tearing at tired things. She scratched it open, spread compost, mixed in manure, and planted the pumpkin cedars with oats, clover, and a strip of cowpeas to hold the soil. Then she fenced the sheep around it in rotations, letting them graze near but not destroy the young vines. The neighbors understood even less now. Feeding pumpkins was foolish. Planting pumpkins in pasture was worse. One man told Ted Rollins that Ruth Weller had finally made farming into a superstition. Ted laughed when he heard it, but not as long as he would have the year before. By June, the sleeping field had changed color. Not all at once. Land rarely gives a speech, it answers in small grammar. First came the oats, thin but honest. Then clover under them, then pumpkin leaves spreading low and wide, shading soil that had always baked bare. Bees came, earthworms returned under the damp mulch. The soil stopped crusting after rain. When Ruth pushed her knife into it,
The blade went down easier than it ever had. By August, the slope was green enough to make passing trucks slow down. By September, there were pumpkins lying in the vines like lanterns left by a giant. Not perfect pumpkins.
Farm pumpkins. Thick-skinned, ribbed, practical things.
Some would feed sheep. Some would save seed. Some would rot into the next compost pile. The circle had begun to turn without asking anyone's permission. That was when Ted Rollins drove out to the Weller place. He came in his market truck on a Saturday afternoon, wearing a clean shirt and the face of a man rehearsing humility. Ruth was mending a gate latch when he pulled up. Ted did not start with an apology. Most people do not know how. He leaned on the fence and looked at the south slope, where Ruth's ewes grazed the clover between pumpkin vines. "I heard your flock came through winter better than most," he said. "They came through," Ruth answered. He nodded. A long silence passed between them, filled with chewing sheep and late crickets.
Then Ted said, "What did you see in those pumpkins that I didn't?" Ruth looked across the slope. At the sheep. At the vines. At the soil that no longer looked asleep. She thought of Ezra's hand moving across ledger paper. She thought of all the times a thing had been declared worthless by people who did not need it badly enough to understand it. "My father taught me a farm is a circle," she said. "Most folks throw things away because they only see straight lines." Ted took that in. This time, he did not laugh. By the end of the visit, he had offered her every rejected produce lot he could not sell cleanly. Bruised apples, cabbage leaves, beet tops, dented squash, split corn. Ruth would take only what she could handle, only what was safe for the flock, and only on a schedule that served the farm instead of flooding it. That was the second lesson Ezra had left her. A resource can become a burden if you accept more than your system can carry. The first delivery came the next week. Not charity, not pity, a business arrangement. Ted brought 2 crates of bruised apples and a load of squash in the same truck that once would have carried those pumpkins to the dump. Ruth weighed them, sorted them, wrote them down, and paid him enough that both of them could stand straight. The county adjusted slowly. It always does. The men who had laughed by the hay scales still saw Ruth at auctions and sales. They nodded now. Sometimes they asked what she was planting. Sometimes they pretended they had not once enjoyed her humiliation. Ruth let them have that mercy. She had no use for making men confess what the land had already corrected. Years passed. The Weller farm did not become famous. Fame is usually too loud for good soil. But it became steady. The flock grew from 64 ewes to 118. The sleeping field became the farm's richest pasture. Ruth bought the ridge lot north of the cedar line, without taking a mortgage. She sold breeding stock to farmers who had once called her methods old-fashioned, and now called them resilient. Because new words make surrender easier. Her ledgers filled shelf after shelf. Pumpkins were not the whole answer. They never had been. The answer was the circle. Waste produce became feed. Feed became milk. Milk became money. Manure became soil. Soil became forage. Forage carried sheep. Sheep carried the farm. And the farm carried Ruth through years when a loan would have carried her only until the next bill. 24 autumns after the auction yard laughter, Ruth stood on the south slope with her grandson Eli, who was 9 and impatient in the way of children who have not yet learned that the best things move quietly. She handed him Ezra's first pumpkin ledger. The cover had gone soft at the corners, the pencil marks had faded brown. On one page, beside a 1966 entry about hail-damaged pumpkins, Ezra had written a sentence so small Ruth had missed it until after he died. "Nothing is waste until wisdom refuses it." Eli read it twice and frowned. "Does that mean rotten things are good?" he asked. Ruth smiled. "No," she said, "it means you have to know what kind of hungry you're feeding." Below them, the old sleeping field was green under the fall light. Sheep moved through clover. Pumpkins waited in the vines. The soil held rain instead of shedding it. And somewhere in town, a truck was probably carrying away something useful, because no one had asked the right question yet. The county had sold Ruth Weller a problem for $18. She brought home a circle.